This is Ed O'Bannon, power forward for UCLA's 1995 national championship team. And this, of course, is Nick Saban, the greatest coach in college football history and leader of the dominant Alabama Crimson Tide dynasty. What the hell do these two have in common? Well, in 2014, when a class action lawsuit filed by O'Bannon sought to break the shackles placed on student athletes by the National College Athletic Association, Saban's dynasty, the landscape of college football, and amateur sports would change forever. So much so that the fallout from the lawsuit led to consequences that even O'Bannon himself may not have intended. But we'll get back to that later. This story begins far away from O'Bannon and the bright lights of Los Angeles. It starts at a college town in the heart of SEC country, where professional football is an afterthought and national titles are all that matter. In 2006, times were tough in Tuscaloosa for the Crimson Tide. Alabama had just completed their 17th consecutive season without an SEC title, their longest such drought in school history. The Tide finished at or below 500 for the third time in 4 years, and as a result, fired head coach Mike Shula. Alabama football desperately needed an infusion of tenacity and leadership at the head coaching position, things they had sorely lacked since the days of Gene Stallings and the legendary Bear Bryant. Athletic director Mel Moore, a former offensive coordinator for the Tide in the 90s, was tasked with finding a new head coach who would help turn the Tide back to their winning ways. After a thorough search, Moore landed on one Nicholas Lou Saban Jr., former NFL head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and of LSU's 2003 national title team. After returning to the college ranks to lead the Tide, Saban had his work cut out for him, and taking over a struggling team certainly came with growing pains. In Saban's first season, the Tide didn't improve much from 2006, finishing with a 7-6 record and a win in the Independence Bowl. But after some time to get his feet wet in Tuscaloosa, Saban started doing what he did best: recruiting. Nick's first class with Alabama finished 12th in the recruiting rankings, a class that included 2009 SEC Defensive Player of the Year Rolando McClain and NFL star Kareem Jackson. As a result, the Tide improved drastically in 2008, finishing 12-2 and making their first SEC championship game appearance in nearly 2 decades. The next season, after signing superstars Courtney Upshaw, Dante Hightower, Mark Ingram, and Julio Jones, the Tide had officially turned. Alabama rolled to a 14-0 record, and Saban won his first national title as head coach of the Tide, simultaneously becoming the first coach in Division I college football history to win a title with 2 different schools. Over the next 3 seasons, Bama would finish with a staggering 35-5 record, including back-to-back national titles in 2012 when they avenged their loss to LSU with a dominant defensive performance, winning 21-0, and in 2013 when they rolled over Manti Te'o and Notre Dame 42-14. While Alabama's success had returned, Saban was never satisfied. The Tide continued dumping massive sums of money into new state-of-the-art facilities and developing innovative training programs that help players reach the NFL level at a jaw-dropping clip. The team achieved unmatched success in college football, but Saban didn't settle for being the standard. He continued to reset it. After Saban's first 5 seasons with the Tide, national titles had become the standard. While they may have failed to bring home college football's ultimate prize in 2013, thanks to one of the most iconic final plays in sports history, and in 2014, when they lost to an uber-talented Cardell Jones-led Ohio State team, Nick's generational recruiting run continued. In Saban's first 8 years with Alabama, he brought in 7 top 5 classes, including 4 straight number 1 overall groups from 2011 to 2014. The championship pedigree had been successfully built. The facilities and training programs were the best in the country, and Saban had staked his claim as the official NFL pipeline. Saban's dominance over college football recruiting had officially been asserted, but that same year, the greatest threat to Nick's dynasty was born, and was lurking in the shadows, waiting to take him down. Across the country, in Northern California, former UCLA power forward Ed O'Bannon had grown beyond frustrated with the NCAA. O'Bannon was a star on UCLA's 1995 championship team, and after his college career ended, was the 9th overall selection by the New Jersey Nets in the 1995 NBA draft. Ed's NBA career was short-lived, however, only playing 2 years before moving overseas, where he played another 8. In 2009, well after his playing days were over, O'Bannon noticed something rather peculiar. While playing with his 1995 UCLA Bruins team in EA Sports NCAA Basketball 2009, Ed recognized a bald-headed power forward wearing the number 31, who, in the game, was nameless. That player, Ed realized, was himself. The video game had used his image and likeness, but not his name, and in return, he had received zero compensation for it. In other sports video games, like Madden and NBA 2K, professional players receive compensation for being featured in the game. But due to amateurism in college sports at the time, players featured in college video games were unable to be compensated due to NCAA rules. These rules, while different in practice, are similar in nature to the same rules that took away Reggie Bush's Heisman in 2010 and led to a 5-game suspension of Terrell Pryor a year later. Bush had received compensation from Lloyd Lake under the agreement that he'd sign Lake as his sports agent when he turned pro, and Pryor was suspended for selling sports memorabilia he had accrued while playing at Ohio State. Simply put, college players were not allowed to receive any form of compensation, financial or otherwise, in return for their performance on the field, or their name, image, and likeness off of it. These rules angered Ed, and as a result, he filed an antitrust class action lawsuit against the NCAA, claiming they had violated the Sherman Antitrust Act prescribing the right to free competition, and that the NCAA had deprived him of his right to publicity. During Alabama's dominant run, O'Bannon was assembling a team of high-profile athletes to join his lawsuit, including Hall of Famers Oscar Robertson and Bill Russell, as well as almost 20 other former student athletes. In June of 2014, the trial was finally heard, and closing statements were submitted on July 10th. On April 8th, the verdict was rendered, and Judge Wilkin ruled the NCAA had indeed violated antitrust law. Wilkin stated that schools should be allowed to provide full tuition, room and board costs, as well as up to $5,000 in a trust per student athlete per year of eligibility. The NCAA appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court denied their appeal, and the NCAA, as well as EA Sports, were required to pay $42.2 million to the plaintiffs, roughly $4,000 per individual. The immediate fallout was significant, but the impact this court case would have down the road was far greater than a $42.2 million payout, as this case would ultimately change college sports forever. While all of this was going on, Bama kept rolling. In the 2015-16 season, Bama was back to the national title. In the college football playoff semifinal, they rolled Michigan State 38-0 on the back of Heisman Trophy winner Derrick Henry to reach their 4th national title in 7 seasons, where they matched up against former Saban assistant Dabo Swinney, quarterback Deshaun Watson, and the Clemson Tigers. The game was an instant classic, with both teams trading blows, but ultimately, Alabama's elite recruiting over the past several seasons proved too much, as they outlasted the Tigers 45-40 to bring home Saban's 4th national title in as many tries with the Tide, pulling Nick within 1 championship of Bear Bryant. While Saban's run up to this point was already stuff of legend, 2016 was just the beginning. In the 2016-17 season, Alabama was back in the title game after soundly beating Washington 24-7, where they faced Clemson in round 2. In another hotly contested matchup, Clemson got the best of Bama, when Deshaun Watson hit Hunter Renfrow with 1 second left on the clock to put Clemson up 35-31. In 2017, the Tide were back in the college football playoff again, this time facing Clemson in the semifinals, where they won the grudge match in the best of 3, 24-6. In the title game, they had a matchup against another former Saban disciple, Kirby Smart, and the Georgia Bulldogs. After trailing 13-0 at halftime, and with Jalen Hurts in the offense struggling, Saban made an unprecedented move. He benched Jalen in favor of freshman Tua Tagovailoa. The Tide roared back, putting up 20 points in the second half, and after holding Georgia to a field goal on their first possession of overtime, Tagovailoa and Devonta Smith won the national title in the game's final play. 2019 was a significant year for Saban and the Tide, but not in the way most would think. Alabama's season was a bit of a letdown. Hero of the national championship game and superstar quarterback Tua Tagovailoa struggled with injury, an injury that proved too great for the Tide's all-world recruiting to overcome. They lost to an all-time great LSU team led by Joe Burrow and Ed Orgeron, who inevitably went on to win the national title. And Alabama finished with an 11-2 record, missing the playoff and national title for the first time in 4 seasons. But the bad news didn't stop there. That same year, after many other class action lawsuits had been filed against the NCAA, Judge Wilkin ruled against the NCAA once again, allowing student athletes access to exclusive college benefits. While not overly significant at the time, it allowed schools to offer higher value athletic scholarships, effectively paving the way for future NIL cases to be heard. In 2020, after the slight downturn, the Tide were back in form. In a season marred by the coronavirus outbreak, the Tide would not be deterred. They rolled through their schedule, making another college football playoff semifinal, where they handled Notre Dame once again, 31-14, and capped off their perfect season with a national title win over Ohio State in a dominant 52-24 performance, pulling Saban in front of Bear Bryant for the most national titles as a head coach, with 7 overall. After their historic 6th national title in 12 seasons, Alabama and Saban would finally meet their maker in 2021. The Tide team continued to cruise, finishing 11-1 in the regular season, needing a win over Georgia in the SEC title game to make the playoff. The Tide won handily, thanks to all-world play from star quarterback Bryce Young and speedy receiver Jamison Williams. In the semis, they faced a stout Cincinnati Bearcats team, led by star cornerback Sauce Gardner. The Tide, however, were too much for the Bearcats to handle, and Alabama was back in the national title, set for another matchup with Georgia. This time, there would be no halftime adjustment to put Saban and the Tide over the top. Superstar receiver Jamison Williams tore his ACL in the second quarter, and without him, the Bulldogs were too much for Alabama, cruising to a 33-18 victory for Kirby Smart's first national title and victory over his mentor. The national title loss wasn't the only bad news for Bama, however. Prior to the 2021-2022 season, the Supreme Court affirmed that student athletes were eligible for paid endorsements, sponsorships, and could hire an agent. Name, image, and likeness had finally taken its first breath, and, in effect, changed college sports forever. With the addition of NIL, in combination with the transfer portal, college sports had now become professionalized, with NIL serving as contracts and the transfer portal as free agency. In many instances, players would attend schools for a season or two, and then after achieving some success, would transfer to a powerhouse for increased exposure, or in the case of Quinn Ewers, for even more lucrative NIL deals. Loyalty in college football, unfortunate or not, had officially reached a professional level of low. While loyalty was low, college athletes' paydays were not. Thanks to the new rules, stars across college sports were bringing in insane sums of money through endorsement deals at staggering clips. Top college football players like Alabama's Bryce Young, USC's Caleb Williams, and Colorado's Travis Hunter became multimillionaires overnight. But the impact of NIL reached far beyond college football. Caitlin Clark of Iowa raked in a staggering $3.1 million in her final year at Iowa. By comparison, her WNBA contract is worth $338,000 over 4 years, roughly 10% of the total compensation in quadruple the amount of time. LSU gymnast Livy Dunn's numbers are also staggering. While the exact amount is unknown, it's been reported that the college gymnastics and TikTok sensation made $3.4 million in NIL while at LSU, an absurd payday for a competitor in a sport of lesser popularity than women's basketball and men's college football. Angel Reese, who played for LSU's women's basketball team, made over $1 million as well. Overnight, NIL packages for student athletes had become insanely lucrative, so much so that the money made from staying in college far exceeded that of going pro, unless you are a first-round pick in the NFL, NBA, or MLB draft. Beyond the contracts many student athletes had signed, the reinstitution of arguably America's favorite sports game, EA Sports College Football, returned, thanks to NIL. The main reason behind the court proceedings of NIL, the college sports video games, had at long last finally returned. Players were compensated $600 and a copy of NCAA 25 for being featured in the game. And to top it all off, Reggie Bush finally got his beloved Heisman back. the NIL story had come full circle. With all of this happening off the field, the impacts on the field were far-reaching. Because of the transfer portal and NIL, traditional recruiting powerhouses like Alabama no longer brought in all the best recruits season after season. While Alabama continued recruiting at a high level after NIL was instated, the sizable gap Saban and the Tide had built started to narrow. As a result, other schools with deep pockets, who were traditionally lower on the recruiting rankings, were able to compete. In 2022, Texas A&M brought in the top class, their first ever since the inception of the 24/7 and Rivals recruiting rankings. Their arch-rival, Texas Longhorns, another historic program loaded with connections that have deep pockets, saw a massive spike in their recruiting outcomes post-NIL. From 2015 to 2021, Texas's average recruiting class ranking was just over 10. From 2022 to 2024, the Longhorns have had 3 straight top 5 classes, including the number 1 overall recruit in 2023, Archie Manning, son of Cooper and nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning, whose $3.8 million NIL valuation in 2023 was reportedly second to only Bronny James. Clemson was a team that had become a recruiting powerhouse under former Saban assistant Dabo Swinney. Swinney has been very outspoken about NIL and highly critical of player compensation, stating that college football has lost its way with NIL. From 2018 to 2021, Clemson capitalized on their strong performances and averaged a recruiting class ranking of just over 6. But since NIL came into the fold, the Tigers have had one top 10 class, where they ranked 10th in 2022. As a result, the rest of college football caught up to the Tigers, and in turn, caught Bama. Bama, however, continued to recruit at an incredibly high level after NIL, but their player culture began to waver. The discipline, the accountability, and the hard work that Saban had instilled in his players began to taper. NIL earnings, as opposed to national titles in the NFL draft, had become the new focus of Saban's college athletes. With the playing field evened and Georgia's rise as a national powerhouse, the Tide became slack. Even with superstar players like Bryce Young and Will Anderson Jr., the Tide failed to achieve the success they had grown accustomed to. After losing to Georgia in the 2021 title, Bama's stranglehold on college football had officially loosened. The next year, the Tide lost twice in consecutive seasons for the first time in nearly a decade, when they lost to Tennessee and LSU, and missed the SEC title for the second time in 4 seasons, another rarity in the Saban era. With NIL in full swing and the transfer portal acting as free agency, college football had officially changed forever. Young and Anderson left for the NFL draft, and the next wave of Bama stars stepped up. In 2023, Saban embarked on his 17th season with the Tide and struggled throughout the season. They lost to Texas at home 34-24 in their second game, a type of game that Bama historically dominated on neutral site fields in years past. In the following game, the Tide also struggled against South Florida, only putting up 17 points, and Jalen Milroe, starting quarterback, was benched. The season started to feel as though Bama had officially lost their touch. After that game, however, something clicked. Milroe was back in the starting lineup, and the offense started to hum. Bama rattled off 9 straight wins, capped off by an instant classic victory over Auburn in the Iron Bowl. In the 2023 SEC Championship game against Georgia, Bama needed a win to get into the playoff. Bama jumped on the Bulldogs after going down 7-0 early and built a 10-point lead going into halftime. The Tide would hold on to win in the second half, 27-24, ending the Bulldogs' 29-game win streak. In the college football semifinals, the Tide faced Michigan in the Rose Bowl, and the game lived up to the hype. Both teams traded blows in the first quarter, and Michigan took the lead 13-10 at half. After a scoreless third quarter, Bama rattled off 10 straight, taking a touchdown lead, and their performance began to look reminiscent of Tide teams in years past. But their defense would loosen. Michigan embarked on a 75-yard drive, capped off by a Roman Wilson touchdown to tie it up at 20, and sent the game to overtime. On the first possession of OT, Blake Corum broke loose for a 17-yard score, and the pressure was on Bama. After completing an 11-yard pass on 3rd and 14, Milroe and the Tide needed 3 yards on 4th down to keep the game going. Michigan stuffed Milroe on a QB keeper, and Bama fell short of a national title berth with their first semifinal loss in a decade. After the season, Saban decided to hang it up. In 2022, Saban had agreed with Alabama AD Greg Byron to take it on a year-by-year basis. And even though he believed in the program he had built, his concerns over NIL and the transfer portal overcame his desire to continue coaching. Saban cited these two brand new college football elements as his reason for stepping down, stating that in years past, the program was built on how much Alabama could do for players' development and their future, but that now the primary focus of players was how much they were going to play and how much they were going to get paid. Saban felt, for the first time in his career, that his culture may not work anymore, that college football had become about money and not the success they worked so hard to achieve in years past. College football, in Saban's eyes, had officially changed for good, and there's no doubting that it has. From the return of college football's video game, where gamers can create their own NIL deals in Road to Glory and enter the transfer portal, to the players leaving schools for big deals in real life, there's no question the game has changed. While the Heisman and a national championship are still the apple of many players' eyes, it feels as though that the apple may not shine as bright as it once did. As for Bama, they brought on Kalen DeBoer, the coach who led Washington to the national title after just 2 seasons with the program. It appeared as though Bama was in good hands, even with the impossibly large shoes Saban left to fill. But after a substandard start to the season, it looks as though those shoes might be bigger than anticipated. Only time will tell if Bama can remain a powerhouse, but there's no question that Saban will be missed, and the game of college football has changed forever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you enjoy football stories like these, click the link in the description to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, where we'll be sharing more football stories and discuss weekly football news in both college and the NFL.